Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the A's? And we are about to begin our first full free agency period as general manager of the Oakland A's. We're already close to a month into the offseason. We've gotten through salary arbitration and free agent filings, and time to start improving this team, hopefully. Before I get into that, I just want to check in on player development. You may remember from the last episode that we sent 8 players into the player development lab this year, and everyone is frustrated or struggling at this point with the programs that we have set up for them. Did also want to just kind of address a comment from Not My Four Ply about potentially having put Joe Boyle into the development lab to improve his control. Those of you who have watched previous videos of mine know that I have no tolerance for players with poor control. I think Not My Four Ply makes a fair point that with a 3-pitch arsenal and decent stamina, Boyle could eventually be a starter for us. But I don't think there's any guarantee that he's ever going to get the control figured out. 54 walks and 81 2/3 innings this year. Even if he did brilliantly in the lab, that probably gets his control up to 40. And I just preferred to invest in players that are either parts of our future, like Marston and Hornez, or players that I think are bigger parts of our present and potentially going to be with us for the next several seasons in the cases of Miller, Ruiz, Cabrera, Spence, Schmidt, and Meadows. So I think it's a good suggestion, but basically I'm writing Joe Boyle off. Going to try to see if there's anything we can get for him in trade. Just don't have any patience at all for guys who walk a ton of batters. And if there's any value on Boyle in the trade market, we'll probably be moving on from him this offseason. And speaking of the trade market, we've done a couple really minor trades here to start things off. We got catcher Will Banfield, the backup from the Diamondbacks. I really like his defense. He's 25 years old, making the major league minimum. Made his major league debut last year with Miami, and then they traded him to Arizona. Did not hit particularly well at either stop, but especially in Arizona, where his WRC plus was minus 11. But feel like he could be an ideal backup catcher for us for hopefully several years to come. I don't know that the bat's ever really going to be major league quality, but it's not inconceivable that he could be putting up a 70, maybe an 80 WRC plus in a best case scenario. And if he's able to do that with the excellent defense that he brings and a really cheap contract for the next few years, I think he could be an interesting backup catcher for us. The most interesting guy that we had to give up for him, in my opinion, was the minor league second baseman Austin Martin, who we traded for during the season. I think he's a very versatile player, like the fact that he has some speed, but not really all that enthusiastic about his bat. Does have good contact and eye ratings, but I think as a guy who's going to be 26 before the regular season starts, and he's never even played in the majors yet, just not sure exactly how valuable is going to be, and kind of preferred to get someone who I think we're going to pencil in as our backup catcher for the next several years. And if somehow the bat develops a little better than we think it would, he could be competing to be a starting catcher. The other move, pretty boring as well, sent a minor league pitcher, Jacob Waters, not a big part of our system, to the Braves for the veteran reliever Michael Tonkin. He's going to be making about $1.1 million from us this year. We got the Braves to retain 40% of his salary. I don't think we'll be bringing him back the season after next for $2.6 million. But considering all we had to do was get rid of a guy that's not really a big part of our future in Jacob Waters, and we've got a guy who should be a solid, respectable bullpen arm, I think that made sense for us. He's been pretty much a major league average type pitcher over the course of his career. But last year, with the Mets particularly, before he got traded to Atlanta, he was pretty darn effective. And even with Atlanta, he put up a 2.28 ERA. So for the year, a 2.03 ERA plus and 89 FIP minus. Feel like he's better than a lot of the guys that we've had in the back end of our bullpen. Not a long-term commitment, not a huge financial commitment, and the money we'll be paying him next year is probably cheaper than trying to find an equivalent player on the free agent market. So felt that that made sense as well. We've also cut our draft budget since the last episode. Right now, the recommended draft slot amount is a little less than $10 million. So that gives us a little more financial flexibility for now. We'll see what happens with the draft lottery, and that number could very well change. And we may want to, kind of put some more money in the draft budget for next year. I know several of you have talked about this in the comments to some of the last few episodes, and I do hear you saying that, we don't necessarily need to go crazy with player development yet because we don't have a ton of great prospects in our system. I'm hoping you may feel otherwise based on the guy we got in the 4th pick in the draft this past year, as well as hopefully some of the moves that we'll be making in international amateur free agency in less than 2 months. But it's conceivable that we're probably not going to spend $40-ish million in free agency, in which case we can probably put a little bit extra in the draft budget, and that might allow us to get a little more aggressive and pick a player or two looking for more than slot when we get to the 2025 draft. And the last thing I wanted to check in before we start moving through the offseason is just the owner goals. Even though we did surprise with 77 wins this past season, John Fisher only wants us to not suck completely next year. So my approach for free agency is we've got to bring in some players to help us, and I don't want to suck next year. But do I think this team is ready to contend? No. And since there's no pressure from ownership to even get this team to 500 next year, if I can find a player who we can sign to a real good contract for 3, 4, 5, 6 years that is of an age where they'll still be an effective player 3, 4, 5, 6 years in the future, I'll certainly do that. But I'm not expecting to see too many guys like that we can afford on the free agent market. So I think largely we're going to be picking up guys who can help us for a year or two, let us hopefully put a non-sucky product out, and just start trying to build up our farm system. We do need to find a top 20 prospect by the end of next season. So with the draft already gone, our 4th overall pick, Duncan Marston, is number 65. But we're going to have to hope that we hit on a prospect in international amateur free agency to hit that goal, which is very important to Mr. Fisher. And then he also wants us to upgrade at catcher. You can see Langelier still listed here, which shows that, at least according to him, he views him as more valuable than Banfield, who we just picked up. But I think I'm going to switch this goal. The other one is, if I could click back there, the other goal that we can consider here is improving our team on base percentage. And our team on base percentage this past season, like many other categories, was worst in the American League at 296. And we do have a fair amount of players, 4 to be exact, working on plate discipline in the development lab this year. And hopefully, we will also find some guys who can get on base a little bit more this off season as well. So it's a low priority goal, so not the end of the world, but I think there's a better chance that we could improve our on base percentage than we're going to be able to upgrade at catcher this off season. So we are going to go ahead and accept the new goal here. And now our goal is to improve our team on base percentage, and we've got 2 years to do that one, which gives us even a little more flexibility. So as I think about free agency here on November 26th, the 2 most attractive players on the free agent market as far as everyday players where we could use some help are Willie Adames, who is a excellent hitter for an excellent defensive shortstop, and Juan Soto, who is Juan Soto. So either of those players would be an incredible asset for our team. But given that they'd, in the case of Soto, pretty much take up just about every penny we have left, and even in the case of Adames, take up 2/3 of the money we have left, and given that we've still probably got close to 10 positions on our 26-man roster that we likely are looking to fill and or upgrade, and that we're also probably a few years away from being a legitimate contender for a wild card spot in the playoffs, I just don't think either of those guys make a ton of sense. And then behind them, there's a bunch of guys looking for 10, 15, $20 million a year, all of whom could help us. But with a few exceptions, they're all already in their 30s. And I just don't know if 19 million for Gleyber Torres with the profile that he has is the right move for this Oakland A's team. So I tend to think I'm going to try to play a bit towards the lower to middle end of the market as things move forward. Pitching wise, similarly, there's some really interesting pitchers out there, but the most interesting starters, Bieber, Montgomery, and Snell, we just can't afford. And then even the highest end relievers are generally looking for $10, $15 million a year, with the exception of Giovanni Moran, who's recovering from Tommy John surgery. And he's also got the 35 control that, as we noted with Mr. Boyle a short time ago, I am probably not inclined to bring onto my team. So probably going to be playing at the lower end of the market with the pitchers as well. Would love to add another player who can start as starting pitchers, or honestly a couple guys who could start. But other than those top 3 guys on the market and Jose Quintana, who's got shoulder inflammation and at the age of 35, soon to be 36, probably isn't the right direction for us. Going to probably have to be playing at the lower end of the free agent pitching market as well. So I think it's a little bit fortunate that despite the 77 win team, ownership doesn't have real high expectations for us. And I think I'm going to try to not make any real rash moves and try to live right down and just barely exceed the low expectations that Mr. Fisher has for us next year. Do enough to keep our job and just keep investing in international amateur free agents, players in the draft, development of the guys that we do have in the farm system, and if we can pick our spots when we can, as I said, sign a guy who might be here for 3 to 5 years for a pretty reasonable amount, we'll do that. But I don't think we're going to be making any huge splashes in free agency this season. And we will also, in less than a month, have the Rule 5 draft, where I think a team like Oakland, we could conceivably be picking several players in the Rule 5, given the limitations of our current roster. One guy that I am going to make an offer to right now is Matthew Boyd, 33-year-old starter. Looks like he has bounced back from the injuries that cost him part of last year. Left-handed pitcher, a good, solid major leaguer. He's almost 34 years old, so he's not going to really be a key contributor for us by the time we think this is going to be competitive. But he's been a respectable-ish pitcher over the course of his career. May give up a few home runs as a fly ball pitcher who doesn't throw incredibly hard, but is a lefty. That's going to encourage right-handed batters against him who don't tend to do incredibly well in the Oakland Coliseum. Certainly think he can be in the mix to be a starter for us next year. Only looking for $2 million. Hopefully we'll be able to get him for less than that. Might try to structure a 3-year deal with a few options and see if things go well. We can kind of have him in the rotation the next few years, and if things don't go well, we can get out of that contract without too much pain. And we're going to try to lowball him, which may not go incredibly well here right at the start of free agency, but we're going to offer him a 3-year deal, averaging $1.6 million a year with team options for the second and third seasons. Great contract for our team if we can get it. And he's actually willing to think about it, so we'll get an offer out to Matty B. Not a long-term commitment, and is someone who can at least hopefully help us be more competitive next year. I'm not going to just bail on the season. Certainly I'd love to be a better team than a worse team, but I'm just not going to necessarily make a bunch of win-now moves over this off-season if they require us to be making longer-term commitments to players, especially those who are already in their 30s. And a second pitcher I'm going to make an offer to is Colby Allard. We talked about him last episode. Another guy who, over the course of his major league career, he hasn't even been quite as good as Matty B has. He's definitely been a below-average pitcher, but looks like another left-handed arm who could eat some innings for us, be respectable, and he's looking for even less than Boyd. So we're going to do the same thing, try to see if maybe we can structure a 4-year deal with him, given that he's a little younger, with options for those third and fourth seasons. If I end up using these guys in the bullpen, the money is not crazy. And Allard was looking for the 1 year, $1.7 million. We're giving him 4 years at an average of $1.55 million. Team options for those final 2 seasons. And he's willing to do less for this year. He's down to $1.6 million. We'll see if maybe we can get him to do a 2 or a 3-year deal. But it looks like, actually, I think it's fine. We'll just see if we can get him for a little less money, $1.5 million for the 1 year. Not happy. All right, $1.55 million for 1 year. And he's willing to think about that. So that'll at least give us a couple more left-handed arms, a couple of arms that could start for us. Certainly my hope is that maybe a higher-end reliever ends up lingering on the market, and we can add a guy like that in. And then if any of the big pitchers were to have their prices come down significantly, that would certainly be an interesting avenue for us to pursue. Not really expecting that to happen, though, unfortunately. And as far as position players, we're going to be playing at the lower end of the market for now here as well. Honestly, if a Gleyber Torres, if an Anthony Santander, even if a Max Kepler lingered on the market for a few months and those guys were available for a reasonable price come February or March, I think there might be something for us to do. But I don't want to make any more significant commitments right now until we get to the Rule 5 draft, and then maybe we'll go bargain hunting in 3 or 4 months. The only thing we're going to do with position players right now is try to get ourselves a decent corner outfield platoon at one position. I think ultimately, over time with the A's, platooning is going to be important to us, given that we're likely to have some pretty significant payroll and budget limitations going forward. So we are going to try to reunite with Seth Brown. You may remember he was with us a year ago with a 101 WRC plus. He was sadly one of the more productive offensive players on our team, but we didn't make an arbitration offer to him. I think his number was $3.5 to $4 million. Looks like he's only looking for $2 million on the open market, and feel like he could at least give us a little bit of pop against right-handed pitchers. So we're going to try to do the same thing with him that we've done with the pitchers that we just looked at, and maybe try to make a 3-year offer with a couple of team options. And if he does well, bring him back. If he doesn't, pretty easy to move on from. So we're going to offer Brown a 3-year deal at an average of $1.7 million a year, but really only that first year is guaranteed. And he's not willing to think about it, but he's willing to come down in money. So more similar to our second negotiation with the pitcher is what's going on here with Brown. And he was looking for 1 year, 1.76. We'll offer him 1 year, 1.65. And he's willing to think about that. So definitely significantly cheaper, probably about $2 million less than we would have gotten him for if we had made the arbitration offer to him. So he could be one half of a corner outfield platoon. The other guy that we're going to target for that is Jordan Luplow, right-handed hitter. Over the course of his career, against left-handed pitching, he's put up a 116 WRC plus. So I think this platoon could work. Another guy who, even against lefties, doesn't have great contact, but he's got even more power and a better eye than we'd have on the other side of the platoon with Brown. And we were pretty putrid last year, not just in on-base percentage, which we've talked about, but also against left-handed pitching in general. And Luplow maybe could help us with that a little bit. Looking for a minor league contract that becomes $1.8 million guaranteed if promoted. Is much as I might like to maybe try to lock him up for 3 years, this gives us even better optionality if maybe there's a cheap guy on the market in a few months, or we find some interesting outfielders in the Rule 5 draft. So still going to look to save some money, and we're going to see if we can get him a minor league contract that'll be worth $1.5 million if he makes the team, and he's willing to think about that. So that's even better for us, because if we decide he doesn't deserve to be on the 26-man roster in 3 or 4 months, no harm, no foul as far as guaranteeing him a major league deal. So we'll see whether these 2 early offers we've made to the left fielders, as well as the 2 early offers we've made to the left-handed pitchers, come through for us. And if they do, even if they do, we've still got a lot of flexibility to maybe take advantage of some cheaper players as the offseason moves on. Still going to be exploring trades. And as I've talked about, I wouldn't mind bumping up scouting and player development. And if we've got a crazy amount of money available, I will put it into the draft budget, which will basically just guarantee that in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round, if there's a impossible to sign player or a player who's looking for way above slot, who's kind of dropping in the draft, that might have 1st or 2nd round talent, we can make a play on that kind of guy next summer. And there's another outfielder that we are thinking about making an offer to, Jake Bowers. We didn't have a good scouting report on him, but he's another guy who we could fit into the platoon mix at first base, corner outfield, DH. could conceivably be a bat that's good enough for our team against right-handed pitching. And he's another guy who's only looking for a minor league contract with a major league option. So we'll try to save a little money on that, offering him 1.25 rather than the 1.5 that he's looking for. But he's willing to consider that. So I think that with these A's, I don't typically do a ton of the minor league contracts with the major league options, but in the case of this team where we're going to have a massive amount of turnover this offseason with the players that we've already moved on from, but we've also got the uncertainty about what, if anything, we're going to be able to find in the Rule 5 draft as well as in the trade market. And we've also got uncertainty as to whether maybe a really good left fielder who's asking for 15 or 20 million now might be on the market in 3 or 4 months for 8 to 10 million. With all those kind of uncertainties out there about how we can spend our money, I think the minor league deals with the major league options gives us some optionality to really see how this roster is going to evolve over the next few months. And one thing I think I forgot to mention at the top of the episode was that the potential backup catcher that we had traded for, Will Banfield, also had made an offer to him to sign him to a potentially medium-term deal. Again, I only envision this guy being a backup for us, but I like the glove a lot for a backup catcher, and the bat is not horrible for a backup catcher. So he's got less than a year of major league service, so basically what we were looking to do were buy out a couple of minimum years, although really only one minimum year because this upcoming year was kind of also already set at that 740, but you can see we gave him a little more than expected for some minimum years, and then we bought out some arbitration eligible years, but not at crazy money if he ends up becoming a useful backup catcher with that glove. And then when the numbers start getting high, we've got the opportunity to get out of this contract. So it's conceivable he could be our backup catcher for the next half decade. It's also, like I said, there's some chance that the bat will end up being good enough, particularly if maybe we put him through a couple of development lab stints over the next couple years, that he could be a decent enough starting catcher with the bat, with a great glove. I do tend to think he's going to be more of a backup, but given that good defense, I don't think the money that we're potentially paying him is going to be egregious. And I think it's a contract that we could trade even before those team option years if we decided that it didn't make sense for us in Oakland. And as we noted at the beginning of the episode, Mason Miller, our excellent closer, is in the development lab trying to kind of improve his stamina, so maybe we can stretch him out to be a starter. Several of you have commented in previous episodes that he's probably the best trade bait we have, and we don't really need a top-flight closer. And I agree with both of those points, and you can see here we can get some pretty interesting players back in return for a trade for Mason Miller. Now, a lot of them are really good players who are making really good money, while Mason Miller is still making the major league minimum. But there's one option in particular that's very intriguing to me. I don't think I'm going to do it, but I'd love to give our worldwide scouting department an opportunity to opine on it for me, since I'm guessing a similar-ish offer may still be around down the line. And actually, it's not there anymore. So I think Miami may have thought better of this. Not that I'm not also a little bit intrigued by Jesus Sanchez, but there was a time right at the start of the free agent period, so kind of between our last episode and this episode, when I was just kind of messing around with things, spending some time looking at the options, And, huh. Maybe they've already traded him away. Maybe they were really serious about trading him. Interesting. Yeah, he's gone. The Marlins were willing to trade us Jesus Luzardo straight up for Mason Moore. And being someone who loves pitching and being a pitching snob, I was incredibly intrigued by this guy with a 4-pitch arsenal, very good stamina, stuff excellent, plus movement potentially, plus control. Would have clearly been the number one starter in our rotation, but is intriguing as he is. He's going to be making about $9 million this year and then $11 million the year after, and then he's going to be becoming a free agent, and I'm guessing he's going to be looking for upwards of $20 million a year. So I felt like we were to be losing Mason Miller to potentially just rent Luzardo for a year and a half and then probably have to trade him away before the trade deadline in 2026 to maybe get something for him then. And given that I don't really think we're going to be that competitive, and that I do, at this point know that Mason Miller has some pretty intriguing trade value, I don't feel like I need to necessarily move on from him quite yet. I think at this point we're going to wait and see what happens with him in the development lab, and then maybe we can make him a starter next year. Worst case scenario, we probably make him a stopper rather than a closer to get more innings out of him. And I think even a year from now, he'll be heading into his arbitration years. Right now, he's only set to make $2.7 million next year, or the season after next, more accurately. So I think that he'll still have pretty interesting value for us. But at this point, I'm a little more inclined to wait to see if maybe we have some luck with him in the development lab. But as you can see here, we could get Vlad Guerrero Jr. for him. Now, granted, the money that is committed to Guerrero at this point basically uses up every penny that we have left. But Mason Miller definitely has some value. So if any of you have thoughts on what we should or should not do with Miller, would love to hear them in the comments section. And we've actually received a trade offer from the Dodgers that I think I'm going to accept. They're looking for the minor league right fielder Junior Perez. Fine giving him up. The guy that they're really interested in is Brett Harris, who spent all of last year in AAA for us. Did a fine job there. But they're willing to give, in return for him, the minor league infielder Austin Gauthier. And they're similar players, but what I like about Gauthier is he's a little faster, and I think he's a little better defensively, and he's also got that really good eye to draw some walks. I think overall Harris's bat is a little bit better, but they're close. They both have 3 option years left, but I think I like the better infield range, the better speed, and the better eye of Gauthier a little more than I like Harris. So we're going to go ahead and discuss this trade, see if perhaps we can get them to throw in a little bit of cash since we are the poor Oakland A's. But if there's a deal to be made here, we'll try to make it. And we just went ahead and completed the trade. They wouldn't even throw in a single dollar for us. But as I said, I like Gauthier a little better. He's, not materially younger, less than a year younger, but I do like his higher range better. He's pretty versatile because he can also play a competent corner outfield, a little more speed, and I am intrigued by that eye. We can't have another season where we have a below 300 on base percentage, and I think particularly against left-handed pitching, where his contact rating is a little bit higher, he could end up being in the mix to start for us somewhere in the infield this upcoming year, or if not, in the next few seasons. And no luck for us in the draft lottery this year. That 77 win season comes back to probably haunt us a little bit when we're looking at the upcoming rookie draft. We will be picking 10th this year, so hopefully there will be some interesting talent available there. But I was certainly thinking that when I started this playthrough, I'd be picking higher than 10th in the 2025 draft. And we've made it through the winter meetings, getting ready for the Rule 5 draft, which could be pivotal for us depending on the level of players that are out there. A couple interesting players have been signed. Willie Adames already off the list. Gleyber Torres already off the list. You think about the players that we made major league-ish offers to. Seth Brown says he favors our offer. Kobe Allard says he favors our offer. Matthew Boyd favors our offer, and then the minor league contract with the major league option to Luplo, he also favors that offer as well. So hopefully we'll start hearing back from those players shortly. We'll check in quickly and just see what those bigger-ish free agents got. Torres signed with the Pittsburgh Pirates. 7 years, $15.2 million a year for 7 years. So not horrible money. Still don't know if that would have been the right investment for our A's, who are likely going to have a payroll of about $60 million, spending 25% of it on GT. Probably a little bit aggressive, but he would immediately become the best player on our team. And the Dodgers get Adames, so that's just likely to continue them being a dominant team. 5 years, $25.4 million a year, and he will likely allow Mookie Betts to move somewhere else. And it does look like the Dodgers are going to move Betts back to right field. Last year had another monster offensive season, 35 homers, 87 ribbies, 142 WRC plus, but a rather sickly minus 12.5 zone rating in 907 defensive efficiency for him at shortstop. So that move probably just makes the Dodgers even stronger than they already were. And we've made it to the Rule 5 draft. We're going to be picking 10th here, and depending on what's out there, we could be making several picks this year, bringing in some talent to fight to compete to be on the Oakland A's 26-man roster in 2025. And the Rule 5 draft, not as impressive as I might have hoped. Our scout recommends we go with Daniel Lynch, left-handed, potential starting pitcher coming off of a ruptured tendon in his finger. Honestly, I like Allard and Boyd, the two left-handers we made free agent offers to, more than him, so not going to go for him right now. We are going to start things off by going back to the well with another Yankee. You knew that was coming from me. And we are going to take Ron Marinaccio, who'll be turning 30 years old next year. Like his stuff, decent movement on his pitches, and the control is not horrible. Really good fastball, changeup, and a solid slider as well. Think that he could certainly be in the mix to help in our bullpen. So we're going to go ahead and draft Marinaccio with our first pick in the Rule 5. And although we didn't love our scout's recommendation in the first round, here in the second round we do like the starting pitcher that he's recommending. Nick Frasso spent last year in AAA Oklahoma City. 26 years old, and he hasn't been in the majors yet, but he is a guy with a nice fastball and slider. An above average changeup is his third pitch. Stuff only average-ish, but think his movement and control could be a little bit above average. Has enough stamina to be a starter. Throws in the high 90s. I don't think there's any guarantees he's going to make our team, but willing to certainly bring the 6'5", 200-pound, 26-year-old into camp and see how he looks compared to everyone else that we've got. And in the third round, we're going to go with someone with a little bit of potential. Yordis Valdez, really just like his glove with that 70 infield range. Question whether he's really ever going to be a major league hitter. He's a 23-year-old who's been stuck in high A ball for the last 3 seasons. Think it's low probability that he's going to be able to make our 26-man roster, but beggars can't be choosers, and we do like his gloves, so we'll bring him into camp and get a better look at him this spring. And we're going to bring one more pitcher into camp in the 4th round, and then I think that's going to be it for us. We're going to bring in Chase Lee. Good stuff, decent movement and control, right-handed reliever. Only throws in the high 80s. Does have extreme ground ball tendencies, which I tend to like, especially if hopefully we're able to upgrade our infield defense this year. I think he's a long shot to make the team, but another guy who's a little bit younger. Maybe once we get him into camp and get a updated scouting report on him through the spring, we'll see that there might be a little more there than we see with our eyes right now. And a lot of teams were active, particularly in the early rounds. We ended up taking the 4 players I mentioned. The Nationals and the Rockies actually took even more players than we did, but 4 more guys who are going to be in camp with us. Now it's just a matter of hopefully before we get to January 1st, seeing if we can get some of the players that we've made those offers to signed. And we finally have a player signed the day after Christmas. It's a Christmas miracle. And Kobe Allard is signed with us. The fans are actually excited about it, which is nice to see. Ended up just being a 1-year deal. He'll be arbitration eligible next year. Got a little bump in fan interest from bringing Allard on board. We're not in the orange anymore. We've progressed to yellow. So we are making some massive progress here with the Oakland A's. And Jordan Luplow, Seth Brown, and Matthew Boyd have all signed their contracts as well, along with, as you can see, some other depth pieces for our AAA club likely. So that is positive. Heading towards the end of the year at this point, we've got still $37 million to spend. And at this point, when you think about outstanding offers, just a few minor league contract offers. The most notable is the minor league with major league options offer that we made to Bowers. Jordan Montgomery and Shane Bieber still out there, but still looking for more money than I think it would make sense for us to try to pay anybody. Taking a look at the batters who are available at this point. Soto still on the market. I don't think that that's a logical player for us to pursue. I am still a bit intrigued by Anthony Santander. Not a great player, but a experienced switch hitter. Could play an outfield spot for us. Put up a 126 WRC plus last year for Baltimore, and he's been a well above average player for them the last 3 years. Just don't know how many years we'd want to commit to him. And he's looking for 5 years at $14.7 million a year. I don't think I want to give him that many years. I don't think I want to give him that many dollars. But he would certainly be the best offensive player in our lineup. figured I would just check in on Juan Soto for the fun of it. And he says he's looking for 8 years, hit an average of 47 million a year. So clearly that's not going to work for us. I hope he gets his money. Actually, I hope he stays with the Yankees. But Soto is not a realistic option for the Oakland A's at this point, as much as I would love that bat in the middle of my lineup. And before we finish up the episode, I'm just going to check in on a couple of things. Player development, it's been about a month since the start of this episode. Let's see how things are going in the development lab. Still have a lot of frustrated people. But Mitch Spence looks like he's on track to increase his pitch movement, and hopefully we'll get some further positive progress over the next couple months as our 8 players are finishing up their time in the development lab, but doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly fruitful period for our Oakland A's. One other thing we're going to do right now, we're also just going to shop Mason Miller again and just see in terms of prospects what the options are for him. There's a long list of prospects we could get for Miller. Honestly, we've got starting pitcher noted as a need in our team needs section, and you can see that there's a few offers of some prospects there, and I honestly think those are some of the more interesting offers out there. Garrett Crochet, other than the lack of control, pretty interesting left-handed starting prospect. Issue is he's already a guy who's into his arbitration years, so he's going to be a free agent long before Miller is. Mackenzie Gore, another guy already pretty experienced at the major league level, but a good, solid starting pitcher, not making crazy money. Andrew Abbott, 10-14 with a 4.72 ERA for the Reds, but looks like a solid starter. And then AJ Smith Shawyer is more of the prospect of the bunch, only 22 years old. Did briefly pitch with the Braves in 2023. Spent all of last year in Double-A. Plus stuff, plus movement potentially. The control not horrible, and a 4-pitch arsenal. So he's intriguing. But at this point, I think we're going to wait and see how Miller does in his program to hopefully improve his stamina, because moving him into the rotation is still an option that we have in front of us. Probably something, even if he's not successful improving his stamina, that we'll look at in spring training. Probably put him into the rotation just for the heck of it to see whether he's a 2-inning guy or a 4-inning guy in spring training, because if he ends up being able to go 4+ innings in spring training, he might be able to stretch out and be a 5-inning guy when all is said and done. So don't think we're inclined to deal him quite yet, but as always, if you've got thoughts on the topic, it's helpful for me to hear them. And with that, we're going to call it an episode. We've still got most of our money to spend. We've added 4 players in the Rule 5 draft. We've added 3 free agents to major league contracts. We've added another potential major leaguer to a minor league contract with major league options, and we're waiting on Jake Bowers to see if we can have a second guy to do that. So we've got already potentially 8 new players in our organization. None of them are going to single-handedly turn us from a 77-win team into a true playoff contender, but at least we're going to have some difficult and interesting decisions to make in spring training. And who knows, there's still a chance maybe we'll do something a bit more aggressive in the remaining time that there are still free agents available before the season gets started. Until our next episode, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.